I'm getting so tired. I'm getting so.
Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and welcome to the show, y'all. Look here. Javier has this talk with Little Richard about how he has to be a little bit smart about what he wants to do. He's giving him an opportunity of a lifetime if that's what you want in the game. You understand what I'm saying? But he's not acting like he really understands what role he's supposed to be playing. Sit back and count your money, man. That's all you need to do. You putting yourself out there, and what he had done, unbeknownst to Javier, unbeknownst to himself, is that these conversations that he's been having out in the streets and all this and that with these different people, one of them is an informant. One of them is an informant. So this informant does what they do. Excuse me. He takes that information back to the police. And it tells them, he said, we got a new name on the board. They put a picture of him up there. Bam. Little Richard. So now they start to look into who he is, and they learn who his father was and his grandfather was. They owned a trucking company, and one minute the trucking company was doing bad, the next minute it turned into a successful business. Now they starting to look and see, and things are not matching up, but it looked really good. But why would a Detroit company, you know what I'm saying, that was small at one time, all of a sudden become a conglomerate owned by offshore businesses and still be doing business in Detroit all over the state, and you really don't have the contracts to back it up? So they started to think money laundering. Listen to me. They started to think money laundering, y'all. So Javier, with his connects on the inside, he tells, look, Richard, look, we need to talk. I need you to come see me. So he flies him down to Spain, y'all. Flies him down to Spain. And Little Richard loves Spain. All the memories that he had down there, all the fun that he had. But it's also traumatic for him because that's where his father had a wreck and died. But he goes. And Javier is talking to him like a brother. A big brother, an uncle, in fact. And he's explaining to him how he's made a mistake. And that this mistake could cost them everything. It could cost them everything. So he has to do something about this. So they want to know who exactly has he been talking to. So they sit down and they go through this and they go through that. And one of the suppliers of the alcohol for his club is who they nail it down. Because he said he was the only one that he told that he'll be able to get the product in the clubs to distribute. You feel what I'm saying? Because he was planning on opening up clubs all over Detroit, all over Michigan. He wanted to do it real big. He had the money. His family had the money to do that. So he was bragging a little bit. And this dude took it and ran with it. And now they're looking. Because Javier got plugs inside the police department. They know. So they let him know, look here, we got people asking questions about the trucking business. So now they're worried. Javier tells him, look, we'll take care of that. But you got to stand down. Just sit back and count your money. Richard tells him that. Little Richard tells him he's going to do that. He's going to do that. And now he's got to get prepared. He's got one night to enjoy himself before his plane leaves tomorrow. So he takes a ride. He's like his dad. He likes to drive fast. He's riding and he's driving and he's flying. And now he's coming up to a stop where it's an older man walking by. He's got his bicycle. He's pushing it across the street, so he stops, lets the old man pass by, and he hears this voice. He hears this voice that says, slow down. Slow down. And he revs the car up as soon as the older man gets by, and he speeds off, tires squealing. Tires are squealing. And now he's on the countryside of this particular town that he's in Spain, in Cadiz, Spain, to where, you know, he's headed down toward the beach area. And it's got these beautiful, the scenery is so beautiful. And he gets distracted by the beauty. And right at that time, he's about to make a turn and the car spins out of control and he hits the railing and it flips. And he's wrecked. The car is upside down. And it's a Porsche too, y'all. The car is upside down and he's still alive. He's still alive. He's unconscious. And it happens to be a passerby going by. They stop. They help him get out of the car right before the car explodes. Right before the car explodes. And when they get him out of the car, they say, "What's your name? We need to call the police." He can't remember his name. He can't remember anything, y'all. He has total amnesia. He doesn't know that yet, but he doesn't know who he is and where he's at. So he don't know what to tell them. So they call the police. They call the police. And when the police get there, they take him to the hospital to let him be examined by a doctor, and the doctor says he has amnesia. They wanted to keep him for a few days. You know, he's not from there. So they wanted to keep him for a few days. And while he's there, he lapses into a coma. He lapses into a coma. Before they can find out anything about who he is, where he's from, he lapses into a coma. There's no paperwork in the car that he had. It was a rental, you know. So they don't know where to start. They check the hotel and they get a name. But he's not there as Little Richard. He's not there. It's an alias. And it leads to nothing. So they don't know who to contact. Now, again, this is in a foreign country. So the news is not hitting in America. Nobody knows where he's at other than Javier. Nobody knows. Javier, he calls his mother and he tells his mother, he said, "Look, he's in the hospital, he's fine." He leads out like that, he's fine. But he's in a coma. I got somebody checking on him every day. And he explains to her everything. And she wants to fly over there because that's her baby. And he tells her, "No, it's not smart. Don't do it. Stay where you're at." Now she's frustrated because she's sick of this. She's lost one, her husband. You know what I'm saying? Somebody she loves to a car accident. She's not losing another. But she listens to what Javier says and she doesn't fly over there. Against all of her instincts, she doesn't fly over there. After about a couple of weeks, there's no change in his condition. No change. Now, people are starting to wonder. His friends are starting to wonder where he's at. They're much older, his dad's friends. And the police are starting to wonder where he's at. Nobody's seen him. They don't know that he took a trip out of the country because he used an alias. They don't know that he's been in a wreck and he's in a coma. He doesn't know who he is. They don't know any of this. They just think all of a sudden what happened? He just fell off the face of the earth. Nobody knows where he's at. But he's in Spain, in a hospital with amnesia. So his mother, she works with Javier and she finds her way to Spain under an anonymous name, and she goes to visit him. And she asked him, "Can we move him? Can we take him back to the States?" And the doctors say that would not be wise. He's not strong enough. So she decides that she's going to take up residence in Spain. Now keep in mind, she's under an alias name. And she understands from Javier how serious this could be because he told her what had just transpired in Detroit about the undercover informant telling the police about who he was, and now she's afraid for him. So she said, "I'm staying here until he comes to and knows who he is, and then we're leaving." And they're going to disappear, and Javier is going to help them disappear. But 1 month turns into 2. 2 months turn into 4. Before you know it, 6 months have passed, and he's still in a coma. He's still alive. Strong brain activity, but he's in a coma. The doctors are bewildered. They don't know what to do other than to let time pass, and hopefully he'll come to. After about 3 more months, he opens his eyes. And he sees his mother, but he doesn't recognize who she is. But he does recognize this voice that's coming from her. But he don't know who he is, and he don't know who she is. So he tells her. After a few days, they getting his strength together, and they're talking, and he's like, "Who are you to me?" And she tells him, "I'm your mother." And then she says, "Do you remember anything about who you are, your life?" And he looks at her with fear in his eyes, and he said, "No, I don't know who I am. Why am I here? Where are we at?" He's asking all kinds of questions that she's trying to answer, but she can't really get into, what he was doing there. She doesn't want to talk about that because every conversation that they're having in front of the doctors. And she doesn't want to do anything that's going to traumatize him, talking about any illegal activity and all this and that, right? She wants to get him safely away from there. So Javier shows up. Once they found out that he was awake, Javier flew back to Spain to come see him. And when Javier walks in, he asked her, "Who is this?" And Javier looks at him and says, "You don't recognize me?" And he tells him, "No, I don't. I don't recognize you. Who are you?" And he said, "I'm a father. I'm a friend of your father's. We go way back. I'm like your uncle." And he stares at Javier, not really understanding what's going on. He doesn't know anybody. And the nurse is standing next to him. And for whatever reason, he reaches out and he grabs her hand. And she squeezes his hand to reassure him that everything is going to be okay. And he asked her, he said, "Can I have some water?" Because he was, his voice and throat is dry all the time because he was in a coma for so long and they were feeding him through a tube and all of this. And now he's trying to get his strength back. And as time goes on, he's spending a lot of time with the nurses because his mom can't stay there every day. She's getting up in the age. So he's spending a lot of time with the nurse. And she's helping him get through this and all this and that. And they develop this weird type of bond where he trusts her. And he keeps confiding in her, telling her that there's something about my lifestyle that is dangerous. And she said, "Well, do you remember anything about it?" And he said, "All I remember is the car flipping over." And she said, "That's good. That's a start." But she says, "Why were you here?" And he tells her, "I was here to meet somebody, but I don't know who it was or why." She said, "Do you think it was on business? Because your mother said that you own a trucking company in Detroit." And he said, "Yeah, she told me the same thing. But I don't know. I don't know what I would be doing in this country in relation to a trucking company." He can't figure out anything. So they talk and they talk and they talk. And during the course of all of these conversations and the days that they're spending time together, he develops and she develops a fondness for him. And they take these walks together when he's outside, permitted anyway, to be outside of the hospital. And she's becoming very protective of him. And his mother, she notices this and she trusts her. And she tells the nurse, she said, "Look, I need to get him home, away from here. He's not safe here." So the nurse, she becomes frightened for him. She said, "Why? What's going on?" She said, "I can't tell you all of what's going on, but I need to get him back home." And the nurse, she keeps that to herself. She doesn't say anything because she's grown fond of little Richard. Very fond of him, So one day while they were out walking and they were talking, she said, "Do you have any idea what your mother will be talking about, saying it's not safe for you here?" And he said, "No, I don't. She said the same thing, trying to jog my memory, but I don't." And she said, "She wants to move you as soon as you're healthy enough to fly. As soon as the doctor says you can, she's taking you back to the States." And he said, "Yes, I know." And the nurse looks at him. She said, "Well, I'm going to miss you." And he tells her, he said, "Look, come with me. You don't have to stay here. My mother says that we're wealthy, so I can pay you, so you don't have to stay. And besides, I'm going to need a nurse, and I don't trust anybody but you. And she looks at him, she said, I would have to change up a lot of things and tell my parents, but I think I could do it for a little while. So he's happy about that, and he mentions it to his mom, and his mom, she's in total agreement because she's come to trust the nurse. She's come to trust her. So another month goes by, and the doctor tells him, said, look, a few more weeks, I think he can make the flight, but he's got to be looked after. He's still in a dangerous, vulnerable place mentally. And his mother fully understands that. So she tells the doctor she'll do whatever he says do. And besides, once they got back to the States, he had recommended that she take him to some doctors, and they had already consulted on the case. So they were waiting for him to get back to the States. And lo and behold, this information, somehow or another, makes its way to his dad's friends. And his dad's friends are discussing this one day in front of some people, and that information makes its way to the police, and they see an opportunity. They see an opportunity for them to be able to manipulate the situation because he has no memory. So they figure we need to get to him before he starts to remember, because he may be able to tell us something that we can use. Because they are sure, without proof though, they are sure that he's involved in drug trafficking. They're sure of it. So another couple of weeks goes by, Javier, he drops in, and he tells Little Richard's mother that he's got a problem with the situation. And Tiffany's trying to understand what he's saying. He's telling her that his informants have told him that the police are trying to come to see him. They want to talk to him because they've learned that he doesn't have a memory. And Javier, he feels nervous about that, about them being able to talk to him. He doesn't want them to be able to talk to him, so he's asking Miss Tiffany to move him now. Take him somewhere until he's healthy enough, and then he'll fly him out of the country on a chartered plane. And nobody will have to know where they're at. Nobody will ever know if she doesn't want them to. So she discusses this with the nurse, and the nurse starts to feel overwhelmed, but she's fallen in love with Little Richard. And she wants to be there for him, but she thinks that she might be getting in over her head. This is a lot. You got the police coming from Detroit, want to talk to him. You got this man that she's not familiar with, who he really is saying that he needs to be moved before that, because Miss Tiffany's not telling her everything. You understand? She don't know her like that. So she's not telling her everything. Everybody wants to get to Little Richard to talk to him or to move him because they are afraid of the same thing. Everybody wants to know what he has to say. What is his memory going to be? Will he tell everybody, you know what I'm saying, the same thing? Or will it be fragmented? Or will he ever regain his memory? Nobody knows. The doctors don't know. But what he does know can take down this international ring. Right? It can take him down. Normally, a situation like this will be handled in a different way. Eduardo, even though he's still up in the age, he's still somewhat in charge. And if it wasn't for Richard, the problem would have already been taken care of. It's out of respect, because they consider him family, that they're not going to deal with this threat the way they would normally deal with it. So if you want to find out exactly how they deal with this and what happens to Little Richard, you're going to have to tune in to the next episode, because it's going to get better. It's been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.